Being understood does not make you powerful. It makes you predictable. That idea goes against everything you were taught. From childhood, you were encouraged to explain yourself, to be open, to clarify your intentions, to share how you feel, so others can meet you halfway. Transparency was framed as virtue, readability was framed as honesty, and honesty was framed as safety. But human psychology does not reward safety the way morality promises it will. It rewards leverage. Readability is not clarity, it is exposure. When people can read you easily, your emotions, your motives, your reactions, they do not feel closer to you. They feel ahead of you. They know how to time you, how to approach you, how to pressure you, how to influence you. Predictability is comfort for the observer, not strength for the one being observed, and comfort always creates hierarchy. Society rewards transparency because it makes systems easier to manage. Readable people follow scripts. They react on cue. They self-correct publicly. They signal needs early. They become reliable inputs in social machines. But what society rewards at the surface is often what it exploits underneath. Predictability is punished the moment stakes rise. This is where the myth collapses. Honesty and openness do not protect you. They expose you. They give others advance notice of how you move under pressure. And once your patterns are visible, your choices are no longer fully yours. Being readable gives others two forms of leverage at once: emotional and strategic. Emotionally, they know what affects you. Strategically, they know when to push and when to wait. They do not need to overpower you. They simply need to time you. A well-timed comment, a subtle delay, a hint of urgency, a calibrated silence. All of these work only when the target is readable. This is why power has always belonged to those who are difficult to interpret. Not because they lie, not because they manipulate, but because they do not give away information unnecessarily. They understand a quiet truth. Interpretation is control. Whoever controls interpretation controls the interaction. History does not remember the most expressive figures as the most powerful. It remembers the ones who revealed least and observed most. Leaders who spoke sparingly, strategists who waited, negotiators who allowed others to fill silence. These individuals were not opaque by accident. They were opaque by design. The belief that openness earns respect is one of the most damaging social myths. Respect does not grow from access. It grows from restraint. People respect what they cannot fully map. They respect what does not rush to explain itself. They respect what remains grounded, even when misunderstood. And misunderstanding is not a threat when your position does not depend on approval. Readability trains people to anticipate you. Anticipation trains people to manage you. Management erodes respect. This is why people who explain themselves often feel subtly diminished afterward. They sense that something shifted, but they cannot name it. What shifted was the balance of information. When you explain too much, clarify too quickly, or reveal emotion too early, you collapse uncertainty. And uncertainty is where power lives. The moment uncertainty disappears, hierarchy solidifies, and rarely in your favor. This does not mean becoming deceptive. It means becoming selective. There is a difference between honesty and disclosure. Honesty is alignment with truth. Disclosure is sharing that truth with others. One is internal. The other is strategic. Confusing them is how people lose leverage while believing they are being virtuous. Readable people are often praised for being authentic, yet quietly bypassed when decisions matter. Unreadable people are often called intimidating, distant, or hard to read, yet they are deferred to instinctively, not because they demand it, but because nothing about them leaks urgency or need. Before we go deeper, tap like and hit subscribe. Because this video isn't about becoming fake. It's about stopping the habit that makes you easy to steer. Over-clarifying, over-sharing, over-explaining. And if you've ever felt people start treating you differently, right after you opened up, you're about to understand why. Also, this is where identity activation begins. The shift is not from honest to dishonest. It is from expressive to strategically opaque, from narrating your internal world to owning it, from needing to be understood to being grounded, whether you are understood or not. Strategic opacity does not mean silence at all times. It means silence by default. It means you do not rush to clarify ambiguity that benefits you. You do not fill gaps that invite projection. You do not rescue others from the discomfort of not knowing where you stand. At first, this feels uncomfortable. The nervous system is used to regulating itself through expression, through explanation, through reassurance. Removing that outlet creates tension, but that tension is not dangerous. It is power consolidating inward. Once you tolerate that discomfort, something changes. People slow down around you. They choose their words more carefully. They stop assuming access. Curiosity replaces entitlement. Respect begins to form, not because you asked for it, but because your inner world stopped being public. This is the law everything else builds on. What can be read can be anticipated, and what can be anticipated can be controlled. From here forward, winning is no longer about being understood. It is about being unreadable enough that others must adjust to you. Long before logic enters the picture, hierarchy has already been decided. Not by words, not by credentials, not by confidence displays, but by the nervous system. Human beings unconsciously rank one another based on a single internal calculation: who feels stable and who feels exposed. That calculation happens in seconds, often without awareness, and it determines who is deferred to and who is managed. The nervous system is always scanning for cues of safety and authority. Stability signals control. Exposure signals volatility. When someone's emotions, intentions, or reactions are immediately visible, the nervous system reads movement. When someone remains contained, unreadable, and internally settled, the nervous system reads weight, and weight becomes authority. This is why unreadable people feel heavier in a room. Not louder, not more dominant, heavier. Their presence does not rush outward. It does not seek response or reassurance. It holds. That holding creates gravity. Others orient around it instinctively, the same way people orient around calm in a crisis. Calm does not need to announce itself. It reorganizes the environment automatically. Unreadability is often misunderstood as emotional confusion, but the two are not the same. Emotional confusion is chaotic. It creates unease because it feels unstable. Emotional ambiguity, on the other hand, is contained. It does not leak distress. It does not signal disorder. It simply withholds information. And withholding information is not weakness. It is control. People hesitate around those they cannot interpret, because interpretation is how the mind prepares strategy. When you cannot read someone, you cannot predict them. When you cannot predict them, you cannot confidently approach, challenge, manipulate, or dominate them. Hesitation replaces assumption. Caution replaces entitlement. Respect begins to form quietly. Social scripts depend on predictability. Most interactions follow familiar patterns: expression, response, alignment, escalation, resolution. Unreadable people disrupt these scripts simply by not playing their part. They do not rush to reassure. They do not rush to clarify their tone. They do not rush to signal agreement or disagreement. the script stalls. And when a script stalls, the person who remains calm becomes the anchor point. This is why unreadability unsettles people who rely on social control. They cannot locate where they stand. They cannot tell if they are winning or losing ground. They cannot decide how much pressure is safe to apply. The absence of feedback forces them to self-monitor instead of monitor you. And self-monitoring lowers dominance. Notice how people behave around someone who leaks information versus someone who doesn't. Around the readable, people interrupt freely, speak casually, test boundaries, and offer unsolicited advice. Around the unreadable, voices soften, timing slows, words become measured, not because the unreadable person demanded respect, but because uncertainty demands caution. The less you leak, the more others project. This projection is not random. People project authority onto what they cannot define. They assume intention, depth, and strength because the nervous system fills gaps with significance. Readability removes mystery. Mystery invites respect. This is why powerful figures throughout history cultivated unreadability deliberately, not to deceive, but to prevent premature judgment. Once people think they understand you, they stop observing you. Once they stop observing, they stop respecting. Unreadability keeps people engaged at a distance, attentive, cautious, and deferential. The hardest part of this shift is internal. Tolerating ambiguity without explaining yourself requires nervous system discipline. The impulse to clarify is not intellectual, it is emotional. It comes from discomfort, from the desire to be placed favorably, from the urge to regulate others' perceptions so you feel safe. Resisting that impulse is not coldness, it is self-command. When you stop rushing to be understood, something shifts. People start doing the work you used to do for them. They adjust, they listen, they wait. Hierarchy reorders without confrontation. And this is the law operating beneath every interaction. The less information you leak, the more power others project onto you. Unreadability is not absence. It contains a presence. And contained presence always ranks higher than exposed intention. Manipulation never starts with pressure. It starts with data collection. Before a manipulator ever pushes, they watch, they test, they listen for tone shifts, timing changes, emotional tells. They are not trying to convince you. They are trying to predict you. Prediction is the gateway to control, and unreadability closes that gate before tactics even begin. Every manipulative strategy depends on one thing: reliable input. If a person knows what frustrates you, they can provoke. If they know what guilts you, they can leverage. If they know what rushes you, they can manufacture urgency. Emotional and behavioral data turn influence into automation. Once the pattern is clear, manipulation becomes effortless. This is why readable people feel constantly managed without realizing why. Unreadability removes leverage before it exists. When your reactions are contained, when your timing is irregular, when your emotional state does not spill outward, manipulators lose their compass. They cannot calibrate. They cannot time pressure. They cannot decide whether escalation will work or backfire. The absence of data creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is intolerable to those who rely on control. This is why manipulators respond to unreadability in predictable ways. They escalate, retreat, or expose themselves. Escalation happens when they increase pressure to force a reaction, louder urgency, sharper guilt, exaggerated stakes. Retreat happens when they sense no access and decide the effort is too costly. Exposure happens when, deprived of subtlety, they reveal intent through impatience, accusation, or overreach. In all three cases, unreadability wins without confrontation. Silence is the first layer of this armor, but silence alone is not enough. It must be paired with restraint and delayed response. Immediate replies teach people your availability. Immediate reactions teach people your triggers. Delayed responses disrupt pattern formation. Restraint removes emotional feedback. Silence denies confirmation. Together, they break the manipulator's feedback loop. Delayed response is not a game. It is a signal of internal regulation. When you do not rush to reply, you communicate that your nervous system is not governed by external pressure. That alone reframes the interaction. The manipulator loses urgency as a weapon. They cannot tell if they are succeeding or failing, and without that signal, they hesitate. Restraint is equally critical. It is the discipline of non-disclosure. You feel the emotion, irritation, excitement, concern, but you do not display it. This is not suppression. Suppression denies feeling. Restraint contains it. Containment preserves choice. Choice preserves power. Here is the distinction most people miss, and it costs them leverage daily. Emotional awareness is not emotional disclosure. Awareness is private. Disclosure is public. Awareness gives you information about yourself. Disclosure gives information about you to others. The former increases power. The latter distributes it. Unreadable individuals are highly aware and selectively disclosing. Readable individuals disclose reflexively and call it authenticity. When disclosure becomes reflexive, predictability follows. When predictability follows, control becomes possible. Unreadability interrupts this chain at the start. It keeps awareness internal and expression optional. You decide if information leaves you, when it leaves you, and why. That decision point is where manipulation dies. As unreadability sets in, identity begins to shift. You move from predictable to unmovable. Not stubborn, not rigid. Unmovable because your internal state is no longer negotiable. Pressure does not accelerate you. Guilt does not bend you. Urgency does not hijack you. You can still choose to act, but action is chosen, not extracted. People sense this change immediately. Conversations are slow. Tests soften. Manipulative angles lose precision. Those who relied on access feel uneasy. Those who relied on pressure feel exposed. And those who are healthy adjust respectfully. Unreadability does not isolate you. It filters interactions. It removes those who require leverage and stabilizes those who respect autonomy. This is why unreadability is not about hiding. It is about withholding by default. You are present, attentive, and calm, but not transparent. You listen more than you reveal. You answer what is necessary and leave the rest undefined. Undefined space forces others to regulate themselves instead of regulating you. And this is the law operating underneath all of it. Control requires prediction. Unreadability destroys prediction. When prediction fails, manipulation collapses. When manipulation collapses, hierarchy resets. And when hierarchy resets, power returns to the one who kept their inner world intact. From here forward, winning is no longer about resisting pressure. It is about never giving pressure a target. If this is hitting hard, tap like and hit subscribe. Because most people think being understood earns respect. But in real dynamics, being understood earns predictions, and prediction becomes control. Stay with me. The next part shows you how to build strategic opacity without becoming cold, rude, or dishonest. People test what they believe they can move. This is one of the most consistent truths in human interaction. Testing is not personal. It is diagnostic. When someone meets you, consciously or unconsciously, they are asking a single question. Can this person be emotionally influenced? If the answer appears to be yes, testing begins. If the answer is unclear, hesitation replaces intrusion. And if the answer is no, testing stops entirely. Readable individuals are tested because they provide immediate feedback. Their reactions confirm access. A joke lands and they laugh nervously. A boundary is pushed and they explain themselves. A subtle insult appears and they rush to smooth it over. Each response teaches others where the line is and how flexible it might be. Testing continues because it is rewarded with information. Unreadability changes this dynamic without confrontation, explanation, or assertion. When your reactions are contained, when your emotional state does not spill outward, people cannot locate leverage. They try once, maybe twice. Then something shifts. The test produces no signal, no escalation, no justification, no emotional movement, and without feedback, the nervous system pulls back. This is why unreadability stops testing automatically. Not because others suddenly become respectful people, but because the cost of testing rises. Every test carries risk. If there is no clear reward, the risk feels unnecessary. Silence and calm turn interaction into uncertain terrain. People stop pushing because they cannot calculate outcomes. Curiosity often replaces testing first. When people cannot read you, they lean in differently. They watch, they listen, they wonder. Curiosity is a transitional phase. It is the mind attempting to restore predictability. But when curiosity is not rewarded with disclosure, it evolves into respect. Respect is not admiration, it is restraint. People stop trying to access what does not open. This is where social hierarchy reorders visibly. Tone changes first. People speak more carefully. They avoid interrupting. They phrase requests instead of demands. Timing shifts. Others wait for you instead of rushing you. Behavior adjusts. Boundaries are respected without being stated. None of this happens because you asserted dominance. It happens because unreadability removes emotional access. Unreadability functions as dominance without aggression, because it never pushes outward. Aggression invites resistance. Assertion invites counter-assertion. Unreadability invites self-regulation. Others manage themselves around you because they cannot manage you. That reversal is the essence of quiet power. Notice how different this feels from performance-based authority. There is no posture to maintain, no role to play, no energy spent projecting confidence. The work is internal. Restraint, silence, calm presence. Once those are embodied, hierarchy stabilizes on its own. Silence here is not absence. It is containment. It is the refusal to fill space unnecessarily. When you do not rush to speak, others become aware of their own noise. When you do not rush to explain, others question their assumptions. When you do not rush to respond, others slow down. Silence becomes an emotional boundary, not a withdrawal from connection. Restraint is what gives silence weight. Silence without restraint feels hollow. Silence with restraint feels deliberate. People sense the difference immediately. One invites pressure. The other shuts it down. Calm presence completes the structure. Calm is not passivity. It is nervous system stability. And stability is what others unconsciously organize around. As unreadability becomes consistent, hierarchy stops fluctuating. You no longer need to hold your ground because ground is no longer challenged. People who rely on emotional leverage disengage. People who respect boundaries adjust. People who are insecure feel uneasy, not because you did anything to them, but because they cannot locate themselves relative to you. This is the quiet sorting effect of unreadability. It does not attract everyone. It filters. It separates those who need access from those who respect autonomy. That separation is not loneliness. It is clarity. Integration is where this becomes permanent. Restraint Silence and calm presence are not tactics to deploy occasionally. They become default. You listen more than you speak. You answer what is necessary and leave the rest undefined. You allow pauses to exist without rescuing them. You feel emotion fully, but do not outsource regulation. From the outside, it looks like confidence. From the inside, it feels like control. This is why unreadability does not require constant vigilance. Once embodied, it reduces effort. You stop managing impressions. You stop correcting misunderstandings prematurely. You stop reacting to tests that no longer appear. Energy returns inward. Presence deepens. And the hierarchy that forms is stable because it was not forced. The law governing this transformation is simple and unforgiving. People defer to what they cannot emotionally access. Access creates entitlement. Entitlement creates testing. Testing creates disrespect. Unreadability breaks the chain at the start. When others cannot access your emotional core, they stop trying to rearrange you. They adjust themselves instead. And that adjustment, quiet, unconscious, automatic, is what dominance actually looks like in the real world. From here forward, you do not need to prove strength. Your unreadability does it for you. At the final stage, unreadability stops being something you practice and becomes something you inhabit. This is no longer a technique you remember to apply. It is an identity shift. You move from wanting to be understood to being grounded, regardless of understanding. And that single shift changes how every human interaction orients around you. Most people are raised to believe that being understood is safety, that clarity prevents conflict, that if others get you, things will go smoothly. But psychologically, the opposite is true. The need to be understood creates dependence. Dependence creates exposure, and exposure eliminates leverage. Strategic opacity ends that cycle permanently. When you no longer need others to understand you, you stop managing their perceptions. You stop clarifying prematurely. You stop correcting assumptions that do not harm you. You stop filling silence to reduce tension. Your nervous system remains settled, even when ambiguity exists. That internal steadiness is what others feel. Not confusion, not mystery, but groundedness. This is the psychological shift from being understood to being grounded. Let's consolidate the laws that brought you here. Readability creates predictability, and predictability invites control. Unreadability elevates hierarchy because the nervous system ranks stability above exposure. Manipulation requires emotional and behavioral data, and unreadability removes that data at the source. Testing stops when access disappears. Hierarchy stabilizes when emotional leverage is unavailable, and respect replaces curiosity the moment people realize they cannot move you internally. Together, these laws form a single identity: strategic opacity. Unreadable people move differently, not theatrically, not deliberately slow, simply unhurried. Their walking pace is steady. Their posture is relaxed but upright. There is no urgency in their movements, because urgency is an emotional leak. They pause without apology. They do not rush to respond, because the response is chosen, not extracted. When unreadable individuals listen, they listen fully, not to reply, not to perform attentiveness, but to absorb information without revealing position. Silence becomes functional. Pauses are allowed to exist. Others speak more, not because they are pressured, but because the space invites projection. The unreadable person does not interrupt this process. They let it unfold. Decisions follow the same pattern. They are not announced emotionally. They are not justified excessively. They are stated or simply acted upon. There is no emotional residue attached to choice. That lack of residue communicates certainty without explanation. This is when speech becomes a strategic act, rather than a reflex. Readable people speak to regulate emotion. Unreadable people speak to move structure. They choose words carefully, because words are not used to discharge feelings. They are used to set direction. When they speak, it lands heavier, because it is rare and intentional. People listen because they know nothing is said accidentally. Strategic opacity creates permanent advantage because it removes volatility from your position. Others cannot rush you. They cannot guilt you. They cannot provoke clarity on demand. They must adjust to your timing. That adjustment reverses the usual power dynamic, where the emotionally expressive adapts to the emotionally contained. This does not make you distant or detached from life. It makes you sovereign within it. You still feel deeply. You still care. But your internal state is no longer a public interface. Emotion informs your choices privately, rather than directing the interaction publicly. Unreadability also changes who stays in your orbit. Those who relied on emotional access lose interest or grow uneasy. Those who respect boundaries grow more consistent. Manipulators disengage, escalate briefly, or expose themselves. Healthy individuals adjust naturally. The environment reorganizes itself without instruction. This is why unreadability is not something you maintain. It maintains itself. Once others sense that emotional access is unavailable, they stop attempting to negotiate for it. Behavior shifts automatically. Respect no longer needs reinforcement. At this level, you no longer ask, "How am I being perceived?" You ask, "Is my internal state intact?" Because when your internal state is intact, perception takes care of itself. The dark psychology protocol locks here because this identity does not require vigilance. It requires alignment. You are no longer trying to appear powerful. You are no longer avoiding exposure consciously. You simply do not leak. Your nervous system is settled. Your presence is contained. Your speech is deliberate. This is the quiet advantage most people never reach. Not because it is complex, but because it requires letting go of the need to be understood. And the final law that governs everything you have learned is this: the one who cannot be read cannot be moved. Not emotionally, not strategically, not psychologically. From this position, you do not need to win arguments. You do not need to assert dominance. You do not need to explain yourself with respect. Others adjust first, because power no longer comes from what you reveal. It comes from what you withhold by default. If this protocol shifted how you see authenticity and power, tap like and hit subscribe. And comment this below: "I don't owe access." Because once you stop making your inner world public property, people stop managing you and start adjusting to you.